I'm the education chair of SV Temple this year. This is our first opportunity to, with the help of our presenter Shri Raghu Avali, to bring forward to you details about the admission process. A little bit about the presenter, just the introduction. Raghu Avali has been a Pittsburgh resident for the last 10 years and worked at Westinghouse Electric Company, where he managed the delivery of automation for the world's first AP1000 reactors in China. Subsequently, he worked at Carnegie Mellon University, where he managed a large defense contract to modernize warfare using artificial intelligence. Currently, he is an independent consultant. He is working on a book on how AI will change the future and the world and its pros and cons. The book will be available on Amazon in the next 8 weeks. His long-term passion is to write an unbiased version of Indian history, and he's also working on that. He has been following the US admission process over the last 25 years and is a trained college admissions counselor and has counseled several students over the last several years. He has given several presentations about admission for the Pittsburgh Indian community. He's also working on another book on demystifying the college admission process in his spare time, which is hard to find. He's also an avid photographer and has been practicing Hindu astrology for the last 40 years. In his other spare time, he volunteers at SV Temple. So welcome, Sri Raghu Avali. I will turn it over to him. For anybody watching this event on live stream, please, if you have any questions, please email your questions at education@svtemple.org. We will either, if you have time, we'll respond to you in this forum, or we'll get back to you via email. Please, but do send your questions if you have. And for the kids here in this auditorium, please raise your hands and ask questions. We'll also pass out an index card where you can write your questions and your name. If we run out of time, we'll get back to you with an email with your questions. So feel free to, I'll pass out the index cards. Feel free to write your questions out. Hope you enjoy and would like to hear your feedback as well once the program is over. Following this program, there will be cookies and snacks outside for kids only. So you'll have to wait for the entire program for that. Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Malini ji, for a good introduction. So let me start with a prayer to invoke Ganapati. So I would chant the first few verses from Ganapati Atharva Shirsham. Om Bhadram Karne Vishwaniyama Devaha Bhadram Pashyemakshabir Yajatraha Sthirairangai Stushtvagam Sastanubihi Vyasema Devahitam Yadhayuhu Swastina Indra Vridrashtravaha Swastina Pusha Vishvavedaha Swastina Starksho Arishtanemihi Swastino Brihaspadir Dadhatu Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So let me, this presentation is all about children, who are going to emerge as the future scientists and future CEOs, future managers, future programmers, etc. So I would just ask the students to describe their name and their grade, their passion, what exactly they want to do, and what is their expectation in this college. But this presentation is not just about the students, it's also about the parents. Parents have definitive expectations about the students, and ultimately they are going to write the check. So that is so from that perspective. So parents, you are welcome to raise your hands at any time and ask questions and clarifications. So I managed to get myself introduced to a few people. I would just start with Arunima. So you want to take maybe just a few seconds to describe what you want to do and where you are. Okay, so wonderful. Gentleman here. And I didn't catch your name. Oh, Chandru. Okay, all right. Aditya. Okay, very good. Yeah, of course. So you are eighth grade now, right? So you will be at ninth grade next year. Oh, you're going to eighth grade. Okay, all right. So is another gentleman here. You want to take a moment to introduce yourself? Yeah, of course. Yeah. Okay. And which school district you are part of? North Telecom. Okay. Sorry. Oh, sure. Okay, sorry. Yeah. So you are at North Telegani. I think that's all the people that we have for now. So just start with quick overview of what I'm going to present. So I have been watching this the college admission process for the last 24 years. Beginning with my two nephews, both of them went to Harvard, but this was in mid 1995 and then 2003 time frame, and of course my daughter is here and she's also at college. So what I have seen is that over the last 25 years, the admission has become more competitive. There are multiple reasons behind that. One of the main reason is the influx of Indians and other Asians over the last 25 years. So that has definitely stressed the U.S. admission system. The admission is not prepared to deal with this many qualified students. So that is something I think we all have to keep in mind whether we are a parent or a student. So given the fact that this is my background, so how do I navigate through this process? So that's one thing. Then I would go over the process, and I would also reflect on my personal experiences about what we did right and what we think that we could have done differently. So I would also reflect on that. I would also give some concrete examples of typical profile of students, given that this is their GPA and this is their SAT score and this is their extracurricular activities, where they have ended up in the past. So my daughter went to North Allegheny High School, and I'm pretty familiar with the profile of North Allegheny students. I can show you some actual example, which is not necessarily the profile of people who actually went, but it is very, very close. That's something you can actually use as a guideline. So with that, the slide that I'm going to show here, this is just the agenda, right? So I would start with why the admission process is different between India and USA. I mean, students, you probably don't care about this because you're already familiar with the US system. But since the parents, especially Indian parents, they tend to be very closely associated with the children's admission, so they need to have a firm grasp of what exactly are the differences. I would just cover that. Then what are the four pillars of admission, and how do you prepare the different types of colleges, colleges within the vicinity of Pennsylvania and Ohio and even New York. Then how the current population's trends affect admission. And then most importantly, I think most of you should have been familiar with the new Supreme Court ruling, which has banned the consideration of race in the admission process. So this is something we all need to be aware of to see how this could impact Asians, or Indians in particular. And what are the 8 different factors that impacts admission? There are 8 different factors that are important for students. There are also 8 different factors that are very important for the institution. So these are called the institutional priorities. At the end of the day, you are most likely to get into a college where your profile matches what the institution wants. Then how the admission process really works, I would actually take you, inside the confines of an admissions office and see how people decide, what people discuss, and how they come to the conclusion. A lot of times, most of the time, the difference between admission and not getting admission is hardly anything. It's just luck at this point. And then how to select the right college and the right major. And these days, it's not enough that if you select the right college, you also should select the right major. Ideally, before you apply to the college by 12th grade, you should have a reasonable understanding of what you want to do and what you want to major in. Last is ROI, return on investment, right? So nothing is free of ROI, whether you buy a house or you invest your money or you pay for college, everything is ROI. And how do you measure ROI? Money is not the only way to measure ROI. How a family defines and measures ROI is very personal and very specific. But I would discuss, how do you address that? The cost of education, unfortunately, this itself is a separate topic. I would not have the time to cover this in detail, but I would certainly give you an idea about the cost. Okay, going to personal experience. Okay, difference between Indian and American system. If you think that you already know the answer, let us know. We can just walk through this quickly. Main difference, the Indian system is highly centralized. The US system is highly decentralized. India, I mean, if you were, I was born and brought up in Tamil Nadu, right? There is only one exam that you write, and the score that you get in that exam is going to pretty much define your future. That's the Indian system. The US system is decentralized. Every state has different school district. They have different ways of grading. That's something to be aware of. Next one is the admission is based upon numbers in India. Nothing really matters other than the numbers, right? But it is different in US. Yes, it is based on numbers. Yes, it is based upon your GPA. Yes, it is based upon your SAT. But it's also based upon a lot of unquantifiable aspects. These are, it used to be your race, but it's no longer the race because Supreme Court outlawed that. The kind of family that you grew up. Are you an international student? Are you a domestic student? Which is the state of your residence? Did your parents, go to the same institute, etc., etc.? They are all called unquantifiable aspects. The Indian system offers no choice in course selection. There's plenty of choice that is available within the US system. The admission, we talked about it. There is no entrance exam here in the US. India, the major is fully committed on first year. If you study engineering, you have to know whether you would be admitted. on civil engineering, mechanical engineering, etc. That is not the case here. The major is never fully committed, but it is changing now. Okay, very difficult to change major in India. Changing major is fairly common, but in the most selective institution, it is getting difficult. Extracurriculars rarely play a role in India. They play a significant role in US. No standardized test. There is no SAT in India. Yes, it is. I'm not going to say it is necessary. I think it is increasingly becoming optional, but it is still an important factor to consider. India, quota-based reservation. I grew up in Tamil Nadu. 69% of all the college seats are reserved based upon certain factors. That is not the case here. It used to be that the race played a role in the admission process, but again, that is no longer the case. 12th year is the most important in India. All grades are important here, especially from 9th grade. Admission is offered after the 12th grade. Here, it is admission offered before the 12th grade. That's the difference, right? Very little scholarship available in India, plenty of scholarship available here. Both are competitive. So how do you, what's the summary? So the Indian system is highly centralized, right, with very little choices, where the US system is highly decentralized and it has plenty of choices. These are the main differences, right? Any questions from the audience yet about this? Don't think the students really care about that, but maybe the parents do. I think I see everybody. No questions here. Okay, let's move on here. Okay, so let's look at this picture. Right? On your right, you see a shed, right? So look at the very bottom of the shed. You see a bunch of rocks. So that's the foundation. The shed is made. You see 4 pieces there. Your family and friends, your teacher, and the school that you go to, your school district that you go to. Your work ethics, your innate skills and aptitude, they mark the foundation, right? So you build on that foundation, right? Then the 4 factors that are going to influence your admission, and of course your GPA. GPA is the most important thing, not SAT. I want to be very clear about that. Extracurriculars, teachers' recommendations, and other factors. So you have a solid foundation, you build the pillars on top of the foundation, and then you are all set. Then the roof is the college application, right? So that is the foundational aspect. Anybody in middle school? I think that is Ananya is in middle school, right? I don't think anybody is in middle school. I'll just skip this. So just talk about what in general as you exit from middle school, right? So ideally, right, you should have experimented with the different extracurricular activities. You tried this, and something may work and something may not work, right? And then by the time you reach the 9th grade, you should settle on 1 or 2 important extracurricular activities. You do not want to do more than 2, because especially if you are going to take a lot of AP courses, you will be spreading yourself too thin. That's something you need to be careful about. The one thing that colleges are going to look in extracurricular activities, and I would cover this detail at a later stage, they are not necessarily going to ask for how many clubs that you are the president, how many clubs you are the secretary, how many clubs you started, right? They are only going to expect what is your commitment, right? So did you stay in one extracurricular activity long enough? Because think about this, right? Leadership is a very important aspect, right? So how do you measure leadership, right? If you do 10 different extracurricular activities, it will be very hard for you to demonstrate leadership, right? So you have to settle on few. I'll just give you one personal example regarding my daughter, who is going to University of Pennsylvania. She's a rising sophomore. So when we came to Pittsburgh in 2012. We moved from a different state. She was like barely 10. So at that point, she was learning, Bharatanatyam, Carnatic music, and piano. I mean, like most Indian parents do. So when we came here, I asked her, yes, can I take you to a Bharatanatyam lesson at temple? And she just looked at me and said, well, I really have no interest in learning Bharatanatyam, but if you really want me to learn, I will learn because you are telling me. So at that point, I decided I'm not going to spend time and effort and money in taking her to Bharatanatyam. So that extracurricular activity was gone. Then she continued to learn Carnatic music for a long time, I think until the 9th grade or the 10th grade. And then she said, well, I think I learned Carnatic music enough, I'm not interested on this anymore. So that was also gone by 9th grade. Then she learned Sanskrit, I think, until the 8th grade. Then she said, well, I'm not interested in Sanskrit anymore. So one more thing out. Then the only thing that survived was piano. So 10th grade, after a few months, she said, well, I really have no interest in learning piano. So I said, that's fine, less money for me too, right? So at that point, there is only two extracurricular activities that she stayed with. She pursued that with a passion since middle school. One is running, and she was in the school cross-country team, and other is she participated in the regional, science fair, for a long time. So those are the only two things. She did dabble on a few more things, a little bit of debating, and then she taught, programming for, she's studying computer science, so she started teaching programming, for, middle school and high school students. She did that for about 3 years. That's all one could realistically do, but I'm not saying this is what everybody should do, but I'm just saying this is what we did, and this worked out for us pretty good. So the moral of the story is that be careful about how many extracurricular activities you want to pursue. Pursue only those easy extracurricular activities that you have a true passion, right? This is especially for students. If you have true passion, then you don't need inspiration from your parents or anybody to go ahead and do that. You do this on your own. That is the true hallmark of extracurricular activity. You should be ready to do that on your own without anybody telling you to do that. Any questions on this? Nothing? Okay. We'll keep going, okay? Next one, okay, standardized test, right? I'll walk through this quickly. Okay, you can take both SAT and ACT. They have a different flavor. The SAT usually they tricks you into making mistakes. There is no questions from calculus on SAT. It's all about ability to think quickly. There are no questions from science as well. ACT is very similar. It can be a little different. You don't have to take both SAT and ACT. But you can try both. But at the end of the day, you only submit whatever was the better score. PSAT, something you take at the junior year. Everybody familiar with PSAT? Okay, all right. So wouldn't elaborate on that. So it defines the National Merit Scholar. The advantage is that if you are a National Merit Scholar, it will open a lot of doors to you in terms of scholarship. But I would also say this: if you are a National Merit Scholar, if you are thinking about applying to super selective colleges, like Carnegie Mellon, whatever, the Ivies, and they really don't care, because as far as they are concerned, everybody who applies are a National Merit Scholar. It wouldn't make any difference there. Colleges often super score. I think everybody knows what is super score is, because if you take SAT 2 times, you pick and choose the highest, in verbal and math and submit that. The tests are increasingly optional, especially in post-COVID days, I think one thing, the government found out was, in the marginalized communities, like in African American communities and Hispanic communities, they didn't have the access to the resources, whether to take standardized tests, whatever, training, etc. They, in fact, in a lot of time, they couldn't even, they didn't even have transportation to actually go and take the test. So, and that is unfair. That seemed to be unfair. Then, most of the colleges said, well, I'm going to make this optional. If you take the SAT and if you actually submit that, we would consider that as part of the overall process. But if you do not take it, we wouldn't penalize you. I mean, that is the stand of most of the universities. There are a few exceptions. If you are applying to engineering in Georgia Tech, they want you to take SAT and submit the SAT. They would not consider your application without SAT. There are a few exceptions. Then there is a common misconception, that most people have, like very high scores, perfect SAT score will guarantee you admission into a super selective colleges. I can assure you that is not the case. So at the end of the day, no, it really doesn't matter. Whether you get 1500 or 1520, 1540, 1550, makes no difference, especially in super selective colleges. Okay, one more thing. SAT test, right? How much time and effort one should spend in training for SAT, considering that it may not make that much of difference. I am all for testing within reason, but studies have been done. The ACT organization did a study in 2018, so they found out that the ACT scores or any SAT scores, they significantly improve only if there is a one-on-one tutoring between a tutor and a student. If you take like there are places like Kaplan, which offers SAT tutoring, and if you are in the company of another 30 or 40 people, in those cases, the scores may not be different. So I would just ask everybody to be cautious in terms of how much money they are going to spend on SAT, how much time that they want to spend on SAT, how it fits into the overall scheme of things. Any questions? Okay.
What is the minimum score that one should have? I know everybody cannot get 1500. So is there anything that college
I think that the question that was asked was, what is the minimum SAT? There is no easy answer to that. That would be evident in a slide that I will show later. I would say it depends. It depends on the other factors. It depends on that colleges that you are applying. So that's a critical factor. Okay, move on to the next slide. GPA. So GPA is the single most important factor in admission, right? GPA is the only factor that determines the class rank. Nothing else determines the class rank. The score that you get on SAT and ACT, it is not factored into the class rank. But at the same time, statistically, there is a significant correlation, more than 90% correlation between SAT score and your GPA. So people who score very high in GPA, they will also score very high in SAT. And the reverse is also true, right? So that's something to keep in mind. That is only one way to increase GPA. That is to take more AP courses. There is absolutely no other way to increase GPA, right? Some schools weigh the GPA and some schools don't. I think as far as I know, in Pittsburgh area, every school weighs the GPA. And the last part is very important. I think the one question that you all may have is that, granted that some scores weigh GPA and some courses don't. So how does the university know, that which is right? So, so each university, they have a process called normalization. So each university, they have their own algorithm. What they would do is that so they would take your GPA from your respective school. They will convert that and rescale that to 4.0. And every university does that because they know about the differences in the way that they are being calculated. Just for an example, right? If you I talk about North Allegheny because my daughter went to North Allegheny, right? So if you go to North Allegheny and if you are taken 18 AP courses, your GPA would be perhaps like 4.7, right? If you go to Pine, if you take the same 18 courses, it may be 4.65. So who is better at this point? So at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter. I think both the students, let's say they apply to Carnegie Mellon, so they will rescale this. Both of them would end up at 4.0. There's really no difference, I think, at this point. But that would be more evident at a later stage. So this is a very important topic. I know this is near and dear to so many Indian students and Indian parents. Anybody has any questions on this?
So anybody have questions? We can just step up and then.
Two questions, sir. One, what if your school district doesn't do class rank, period? They won't do class rank. How to think about that? And in addition to GPA, the points you get in the AP exam, do they matter, like 1 through 5 scoring in the AP exam? Do you need to submit it or can you skip them?
Exactly. Very, very good question. I'll just repeat. I don't think I need to repeat the question because you already used the mic, right? So take North Allegheny as an example, right? North Allegheny do not rank, right? So there are different reasons behind that. I don't want to go there. They would tell that when they, let's say your son or daughter goes there. If you go to the guidance counselor, and if they are within like 1% or 5%, I think the guidance counselor would state that in the recommendation letter. But at the same time, if you really want to know your child's rank, you can ask the guidance counselor and they will tell you their rank. But they will not publish this outside. But your child's rank is a personal information. You have every right to get this. You are entitled to get that. If you ask, they will give you that. Once you know the rank, you can state that in the application. But at the same time, I would say that especially in any school district in Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh has some of the best schools in the nation, it really doesn't matter whether you are 1, 2, or 3. But it does matter whether you are 2 or 15. That's a different story. But 1, 2, or 3 is insignificant. Then the next question is that yes, the AP, the score that you get on your AP courses, that transcends the differences, from one school district to other school district. That is centralized, right? The college board has a centralized process. So if you get a 4 or 5, I mean, you can definitely state that in your college application, and that would be considered. I think I answered your question, right? And I didn't really hear you. So
The school district I'm in, they would not give you class rank, period, even if you ask them formally.
I can't really answer that. All I can tell you is that some school district actually do, but again, but there are other factors that would work in your favor. I think hopefully that would be evident as I move forward. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I guess the question will be same. Is the weighted or non-weighted same as class rank? So there are some school which will not give you a weighted GPA. Is that equivalent to non-ranking?
Yeah. So if the school gives a non-weighted GPA, then the scale is 4.0, right? So when you apply Okay, then okay, let's talk about how the admissions council is going to evaluate the application at this point, right? Yeah, you can hear me, right? So, in the in that case, I think what the universities would do is that they would they would look into how many AP courses your school offers and your SAT score to some extent, and then they will see did the student make use of the opportunities available to him or her. That ultimately that's the most important factor here, more than anything else. So, but again, to expand more on this, so if the school does not weight the GPA, it's non-weighted. If a child, gets 4.0, then when the college rescales this, that will still be 4.0.
The scale in the school where my kid goes is 4.3. So,
Oh, okay. Yeah, I turned it off. Yeah. I turned it off.
so the top score or whatever it's 4.3. So, the question would be, in the mind would be, if it's 4.3 and someone is getting whatever score that may be, how would the college know? I mean, surely the college would know that the maximum is 4.3. Um, but say, for example, you score 4. Um, the question which comes to the mind is how would the college know that if a child has got say 4, what his rank is in that class, from that school.
Can you repeat the question one more
So
time?
the maximum score in the school is Shadyside Academy. So the maximum score is 4.3, and say if a child gets 4, how would the college know where does the child stand?
They would each and every so this is a very good question, right? So every college admissions, the high school admission counselor, they will have a relationship with a lot of colleges, right? So, and that's not something that we would know exactly what they talk, but the colleges would know that if you are from Shady Side Academy, and if you are 4 out of 4.3, they will know how to rescale that. That is their own algorithm. It's very is very customized. Each college will do it differently. CMU will do it one way, Northwestern would do it one way, and Rice would do it one way, New Penn would do it a different way. But at the end of the day, you wouldn't see a big difference how they rescale that.
One more quick question, sir. So basically, the GPA, I'm here.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they will take like 9th, 10th, and 11th. Even though 12th is important, when the student applies, right, it would be November, or I mean, by the most students apply by November. So how do they extrapolate, or like they will only take the 3 years, or the first sem? I mean,
Right. So when you apply, you are going to apply. So when you apply, you are going to apply at the 12th grade. Let's say that you do regular decision, you apply by whatever, October, November time frame, right? So you would submit, the 9th, 10th, and 11th grade. Sometimes it could also include 8th grade, especially Algebra 2 and Geometry. A lot of people take it during 8th grade, right? So your GPA is already done, but you would have taken enough number of courses, right, during the 12th grade. So your guidance counselor should have an idea about where you stand, right? So again, we don't know how the guidance counselor communicates with the college. That's confidential information, right? So the guidance counselor can extrapolate and then arrive at a grade, and then colleges may recalculate and reschedule. It's a little complicated at this point, but the bottom line is that every grade is important. questions, clear enough, let's talk outside the meeting, okay? Yeah. Okay, so we can walk through this pretty quickly, right? There are only three types of colleges, right? There is no fourth type, right? Unless you think about the military academy, right? So one is, okay, liberal arts college, right? So they offer, pre-med, they offer majors in science, history, business programs. Some of the liberal arts colleges, they offer programs in computer science and some in general engineering, but very few, as far as I know, they offer, programs in traditional branches of engineering like mechanical engineering, civil engineering. They rarely do. What is a good example of a liberal arts college? Swarthmore College at Philadelphia is a very reputed liberal arts college. That is one example. The other example, state colleges. The state colleges are funded by taxpayers like us. Pitt is funded by the tax that we pay. Penn State, of course, and then Ohio State. These are all state colleges. And then super selective colleges. These are the CMU, MIT, Caltech, Stanford, etc. These are the super selective colleges. To summarize, the super selective colleges, most of them, in fact, all of them offer programs in engineering, medicine, biology, etc. The state colleges also offer programs in the same major. And then liberal arts, mostly in computer science and in other areas. Any questions on this? Okay, so colleges close to Pittsburgh. I will walk through this real quick in the interest of time. Let's see. We got time. Okay. University of Pittsburgh and Ohio State, University of Rochester, and Rochester Institute of Technology. They are all great colleges. They're very affordable. Cost is much less than CMUs, the IBs, etc. The admission is less competitive compared to the super selective colleges. Some of them even offer full merit scholarship and partial merit scholarships, and they all have reputed programs in engineering and medicine. Okay. Any questions? Okay. All right. So we'll talk about the top engineering school. Who is interested in engineering programs in computer science? Anybody wants to raise their hand? Engineering, computer science?
There is one question.
Okay. Yeah.
So in the previous slide, you did mention about the different colleges, right? Is there anything like a global website or something which can tell which major, ranking of the majors in specific colleges? Because if a kid wants to join a specific major, there are so many options in there. But then there's no global way to put a ranking saying that this major, say for example, is number one in one college, something else in another college. Do we have something like those kind of information?
Yeah, good. That's a very good question. So the ranking it's complicated and politically hot topic. There are different entities rank differently, right? The Money Magazine has a rank, right? And the US News and World Report, I think most people will know about this. So they have their own ranking methodology. There is a World University, ranking methodology. Forbes magazine, so they have their own, ranking methodology. So they all, you will find, some common aspects like Harvard and Stanford will always be number one or two, no matter which way you look. But I think the better question to say it's not really, so you would not see the same college have the same ranking in all the four different sources. They would never be the same. They would be close, but they would not be the same. So I don't necessarily recommend people make decisions based upon ranking alone. Because you take, I think, US News, the ranking as an example, right? So the question is,
how do they rank? So the way they rank is that they, based upon the admitted student's profile, which is, based upon their SAT scores, their GPA, what is their acceptance rate, and another very politically hot topic is yield rate. So everybody familiar with the idea of yield? Okay, so this especially for parents and students. So I will explain this in fat detail. How do you define and understand yield, right? So Harvard has the highest yield, 85%. So let's say more than any other institute. If let's say hypothetically speaking, right, Harvard offers admission to 100 people, only 85 will take it. So you divide 85 by 100, you get 85%, right? So that is the 85% yield. So the higher the yield, the more prestige the college will be, right? So every college is obsessed with yield, right? So then if you take, I think, maybe another example, CMU maybe have a 72% yield. It's a big difference between 72 and 85, right? Then there are other factors, like how much endowment they have. Harvard got $60 billion money, right? And then they can pump in more money for research. They can attract better faculty, etc., etc. And then how much the alumni are happy. How far, are they very happy? They do statistical survey. So that also goes into a factor. And then how much money the alumni give back to the college. So all these things are factors, and different ranking entities, they deal with this differently. So got to be very cautious. I would just give you, two examples where two institutions manipulated the ranking, right? One is Northeastern University. So it's a university in Boston. Way back on 1996, when the new president came, Northeastern was 145, right? So in 2018, when he left, they became 45. So significant jump from 145 to 45. So how did they do that? They specifically, it's in Boston, right? So they couldn't get people from MIT and Harvard to come to Northeastern. They're not going to come. So they targeted on other even Tufts, which is in Boston, and they cannot get people from Tufts to come to Northeastern. They targeted Boston University, right? So they bombard the students with emails and mails and etc., etc., and sort of seduce them into applying to Northeastern. So more and more people started applying to Northeastern. More and more people applied. The seats were still the same, right? So the yield actually, because the acceptance rate came down, because number of people applied, the acceptance rate came down. The other thing I think my daughter noticed last year, and one thing that Northeastern did was, they said you don't have to submit essay during in a common application. When they said that, the number of applicants skyrocketed, right? So Northeastern is 45. Nobody on earth would believe that Northeastern can give you better education than UT Austin and University of California, San Diego. They are world-class institutes, or the University of Wisconsin. So you have to be very careful about how you assess the rank. Also, the other thing is that I worked in Carnegie Mellon for a while. I know being Carnegie Mellon is the world's top institutes in computer science. I know which universities would get the respect from Carnegie Mellon. It's not Harvard. They don't, because in their mind, their idea of computer science, their idea of engineering, very different from Harvard things, very different from University of Pennsylvania things. There are certain institutes that they would like, that is University of Texas, Georgia Tech, University of Wisconsin, University of Washington. So the reputation among the university's faculty is a very important factor that US News completely ignores. So the question to you is that if your child wants to study pre-med, child wants to study computer science, computer engineering, right? You need to find out which university has the reputation in computer science. Of course, you cannot go wrong going to MIT, right? That's a different issue, right? Okay.
No? Okay. We got it. Okay. Uh, so these are the top engineering schools. You see there are two groups. One on the left are all state schools, right? You know, San Diego, Berkeley, you know, University of Illinois, et cetera, et cetera. And one on the right are private colleges, right? So MIT, you know, Georgia Tech, you know, Stanford, et cetera. They all have, you know, international reputation in engineering. They are exceptionally good institutes, very, very competitive. Very competitive to get in. It's also very competitive to get good grades, right? You know, I know I can tell you in especially in Carnegie Mellon, if you end up going to, you know, Carnegie Mellon as example, as whether it is computer engineering or computer science or any engineering, and you are literally talking about 70 hours a week. I mean, there is no other way around this. So it's a very it's a very intense program. I mean, that's also true whether you go to Georgia Tech or University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, etc. I think my advice to the parents and students, right? Yes, these institutes are prestigious. First of all, I think make sure that you have the profile that aligns with what the university is expecting, but that is only part of the story. But also ask yourself, am I prepared to work that hard for 4 years of my life, right? Okay, any questions on this? Yeah, I'm not able to hear you, Ratikanji.
I think maybe I must have misheard. So when you say you are at Carnegie Mellon, you need to invest like 7 years. Did you say 7 years or?
No, I'm saying,
okay,
if you end up doing engineering at Carnegie Mellon, I mean, you are talking about 70 hours a week, right? But that is also true for any of the other institutes. So, but that should not by any means prevent you from applying or even going there. But that's something you need to be aware of, okay? And especially for students, if you decide to go on that road and you are not going to be at home, you are going to be at a different institute at dorm, and make sure that you can handle the load. I mean, that's all I'm saying at this point. Okay, so honors program, they offer a pretty good alternative. The quality of education that you would get in a honors program is as good as the super selective schools. Great quality education. Some offers, I think, full merit scholarships, priority in housing. You know, the priority is in course selection is actually something most students and parents don't pay any attention in the beginning. I mean, this can play a huge role, and especially if you are studying computer engineering or computer science. Let's say, I think UC Berkeley as an example. I mean, yes, one of the best schools in the world, but if you end up studying computer engineering or computer science, you are not going to graduate in 4 years. It will take you 5 years, because so many students are studying, they just don't have the enough faculty to teach at the time frame that you want. So in other words, certain core requirements in computer science, you would have to wait 1 year before you can take it. So that's something to be aware of, right? So honors college actually solves that problem, because you would have priority and dedicated housing, big plus. Opportunities to do undergraduate research. It's a very, very important consideration. And then all majors available. The Arizona State University that you see on the top right, I think it's considered as one of the best honors colleges in the country. They have a lot of national merit scholars. They give a pretty good scholarship. I would certainly recommend ASU to anybody, especially if you are thinking about studying computer engineering, material science, and computer science. The reason being is that Taiwan Semiconductor is building a $40 billion plant at Arizona. So it will open a lot of doors in terms of opportunity in semiconductor, especially if you have interest in this area. Okay, so we are living in the era of AI, where semiconductors are going to play a huge role, as something to consider. So the one thing I would say is that, you know, where you end up and in life and college depends on so many factors. So when you apply for colleges, give due considerations. You know what exactly do you want to do? Or do you want to be a physician or an engineer, whatever, right? And what are the opportunities? And does the college has the right, combination of opportunities and faculty, and then businesses that can support this? That's a very important consideration. The bottom left is, Penn State, Strayer College. I think, personally speaking, I think only reason I think my daughter didn't apply is that if you apply to honor Strayer College, you need to write 5 essays. I mean, that's a significant amount of work. So that's something you need to think about. But if you have the stamina to write 5 essays, by all means you should do. But it's a lot of work. Okay. So this is the super selective colleges, right? I put all the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Ivy Leagues on the top, and then Johns Hopkins and Rice on the bottom left, and then Northwestern, Duke, and University of Chicago. I mean, these are all of course they are what I call name brand institutes. They have instant name recognition, I think, throughout the world. They are very, very competitive to get in. If you believe that you have the GPA and the extracurricular activities, by all means, I think I would encourage you to apply. But I would also caution that each universities have their own ecosystem. I mean, that's kind of you need to figure out if you fit within the ecosystem, right? So so I would just give a personal example, right? So my daughter is at the University of Pennsylvania. She they had she's studying computer science, so they had a session about parents of Penn engineers, et cetera, right? So the dean, who happens to be a South Indian guy, the IIT graduate, is Dr. Vijay Kumar, and he is the dean of everything engineering at Penn. So he was giving a good sales pitch about yes, Penn is great and everything, right? So after at the end of the meeting, I just raised my hand and I asked one question, right? So I said, I'm a lifelong engineer myself. So I said, my understanding is that Penn should train engineers to work as engineers, but you are not doing that. You are training engineers to be in the next Goldman Sachs, next McKinsey, next Morgan Stanley. You are driving them towards the consulting area. Is that what engineering really means? And he looked at me and said, I mean, you have a certain idea of what an engineers do, but that may or may not be what the university thinks, right? He says, this is Penn's ecosystem. That is his word. Penn's ecosystem is money. That is Penn's ecosystem, right? It's a great school, again, but that is their ecosystem, right? So if you really want to study hardcore engineering, if you want to, I don't know, build the next spaceship, the next rocket, right? So whatever, send people to different galaxy, whatever, right? So then Penn, you need to think if Penn is the right choice for you. It may not be, right? Maybe MIT is better, maybe Carnegie Mellon is better. So that is Penn's ecosystem. You need to be very careful about the ecosystem. The Harvard's ecosystem is power, and Yale's ecosystem is politics, and MIT is innovation. Stanford is venture capitalism, right? Startups, right? They all have different flavors. So when you, interestingly enough, when you apply, if you want to apply to these colleges, when you apply, they will see if your profile is consistent with the institution's ecosystem. That's very important. And this is very vague. This is not well defined. This is not something that you can even plan. It's almost impossible to plan. Again, like I said, if you you just have to feel your way around it. There is really no easy way to predict this. Johns Hopkins ecosystem is pre-med. Everybody is obsessed about going to medical school in Johns Hopkins. Right? That's is the ecosystem. Bryce, their ecosystem is energy, finance, computer science, right? Duke, medicine, University of Chicago is economics, political science, pre-med, Northwestern, pre-med, right? So you need to get a feel for what their subtle ecosystem is. And this is not easy to find. Okay, again, yes, these are all top-ranked universities, but not necessarily on traditional engineering, right? So I would say, I think if you really want to do computer engineering, I think University of California, San Diego is the great choice. Why? Because Qualcomm has spent a $500 million plant, right? So any innovation about the Qualcomm's CDMA technology is more likely to come from UC San Diego. So those are the things that you need to be aware of. Any questions on this? Okay, go ahead.
How do you do this research to find out? Okay, how do you know about the different ecosystems of any university that you are applying to, apart from these?
To the 25 years of experience. That is a lot of reading, right? And talking to a lot of people. There is no easy way around this. To find what is their ecosystem, I think ideally you should talk to people who graduated from those colleges. That's the ideal thing, but they're not always easy to find. There is no clear easy answers. I mean, sometimes like in online forums like Reddit may give you some idea, but that is mostly run by the students. This is not easy to find. But you just, if you have any questions in the future, I can definitely answer to the best of my ability. But remember this: Penn is money, Harvard is power, Yale is politics, Princeton is behind the scene, MIT is innovation, Stanford is venture capitalism. I mean, that is nothing. And Georgia Tech, again, people who study computer science at Georgia Tech almost always end up with Facebook, Amazon, Google, and Apple. I mean, that is their ecosystem. Georgia Tech drives you toward these 4 companies. People who study computer science at CMU, yes, quite a few of them, they end up, doing groundbreaking work in AI, etc. And a lot of them, go to, Google, Amazon, Facebook. I mean, that's a pretty common, that's a common trend. Okay, all of them except Princeton and Rice are medical school, right? So I'm going to pause here and ask the audience a question. What does that tell you? Everybody has a law school, they have a business school, they have a medical school. So Princeton and Rice have no medical school, no law school. So, and what is the implicit message here?
Any takers?
Yeah, anybody, yeah. Yeah.
Probably like a differentiator or specialization. They just want to be in a specific area of expertise and not really spread across all
Yeah,
the
so
different domains.
that's a good way to think. The real answer is that if you want to get a very high quality undergraduate education, you should go to Princeton or Rice, because these other institutes, Penn, Cornell, everybody, right? Most of their resources is focused on graduate schools. Is focused on medical school, in supporting PhD students, law school, etc., right? Princeton especially stands out. Princeton has no medical school, no law school, no business school. But it is a world-class institute. It offers PhD programs, research program. If anybody, to me, if anybody has the grades and the extracurriculars to apply to Princeton. You get the best quality education in the world. Right? Not that others are not great, they are, but the focus is only on undergraduate education. And Rice is equally good, right? All of them are private colleges, and all of them are expensive. I mean, that's the unfortunate thing. And how expensive they are, and I think I can give you an idea down the road. I think we can skip through this unless anybody wants to discuss this. Yeah.
Can you say a little bit about the four-year colleges like Rose-Hulman or Allegheny College, Harvey Mudd, Pomona, these
okay.
kinds of colleges?
Yeah,
Thank you.
Got it. Okay. Can you hear me? All right. Okay. Rose-Hulman is an excellent institute. So Rose-Hulman, I believe it's in Indiana. It offers a great program on robotics. In fact, I think I would rate this very high. A couple of things to consider. I mean, academically, it's a great place. In fact, one of our best friend's son just graduated from Rose-Hulman in robotics, and he got a pretty decent scholarship as well. On the flip side, if Rose-Hulman does not offer PhD programs in robotics. I think you pretty much stop with the undergraduate education. That's something to consider. But in terms of the quality of education and robotics, it is very, very good place. Harvey Mudd in California, I think some people would say that graduating from Harvey Mudd is as difficult as graduating from MIT and CMU. It's a very rigorous place. It's a great place, but again, it doesn't offer PhD programs on engineering. But it is a great school, but it's a very expensive school. Okay, did I answer your question? Okay. Okay, so it's a very important slide. What's going to happen after Supreme Court said affirmative action is no longer legal, right? I think contrary to what we think, two states, Washington and California, they already declared that race should not be a factor in admission 20 years ago. So one way to think about this is that what will happen now, now that the federal Supreme Courts have said that it is no longer legal to consider race. In University of Washington, which is the flagship university at Washington, and all the UC system, and after I think it was 1996, they said it is illegal. The Asian American enrollment is increased. I mean, there is no question about that. In my personal view, I think it is going to increase, but at the same time, the number of Asians in this country is also growing. I don't know if it will actually make a difference, One unfortunate aspect, again, in my opinion, is that in the institutes, I are still going to consider, legacies and sports-based acceptance at the same rate. I think everybody knows what legacy is, right? Yeah, okay. Legacy, okay, if you were, let's say you apply to, I don't know, just pick an example, right? Let's say University of Pennsylvania, right? So let's say you apply to University of Pennsylvania. If you have two children, if you are applying for the second children, the first child went to UPenn, you have a slight marginal advantage. Again, other things being equal, but that is a legacy, right? But if you have both the parents went there, your grandfather went there, your great grandfather and great aunt, everybody went there, you have a significant advantage. Other things being equal, right? To me, this is not that's not the way it should be, but that's the way it is. Caltech and MIT never considered legacy. Merit is the only consideration for Caltech, and MIT. Unfortunately, if you are a son or daughter of a faculty, or even son or daughter of a staff of an university, you are still legacy. You would be given special consideration, right? That was the case in CMU and UPIT. I just read the news flash just about 2 or 3 days ago. Both CMU and PIT, they have said that they will no longer consider legacies based upon faculty. So if you are a son or a daughter of CMU faculty, you have an enormous advantage. You have access to all the CMU's faculty. You have access to all their research, which area they are focusing on. You can pick the perfect science fair project and win the Intel Science Fair winner. But in spite of all this advantage, they are still considered as a legacy, right? So I think hopefully that is going to go away. And I do think that, even other universities are actually considering that. The legacy is a very politically hot topic because, especially on the Ivy Leagues, right? So I remember reading statistics like 65 to 70% of a legacy in Ivy Leagues are white Americans. So that's a significant advantage. I'm hoping that this would be outlawed. The federal courts cannot outlaw that. The universities have to make their own decision to do that. So going forward, economic diversity will be a big factor, right? So is this the right decision or not? This is not really easy to answer that, right? So I can only give my personal story on this, right? So I went to college in India 40 years ago, right? So I went to a high school where 7 out of every 10 people will fail. That's the high school that I went, right? So I had no access to resources. I had no access to teachers. Half the time, teachers would not even show up, and I would go and play cricket, right? That's the school that I went. So I wrote the IIT entrance exam. Obviously, my marks were not good enough. Why? I think, because of the high school that I went, right? But if you look at the IIT system in India, right, the people who go to IIT, they tend to have a specific profile. They tend to come from big cities, tend to go to Kendriya Vidyalaya, et cetera, right? The system is definitely biased towards people who are fortunate and privileged, right? But that's not the case here now, right? So if the US system was available in India, and I would have probably ended up in IIT, right? So this is something so now what the courts are saying is that, no, we are not going to consider race as at all, but we would consider economic diversity as an example. So how this is going to impact the Indian American communities is the big question, right? So there are two ways to look at this. I think ultimately we are all driven by our own self-interest, right? What is good for me, what is good for my community, what is good for my child, uh, etc. Right? So there, I would tell a practical way and maybe a more altruistic ideal solution to that. Right? The Indian American community here, my personal view, is privileged. And why it is privileged, right? So most children, they come from a stable background, right? Parents, both the parents are working, you know, making more money than an average American household. Sometimes both the parents are physicians, right? We excel at school. We don't necessarily struggle with English as a language. Even our vice president is at least half Indian, right? So we come across as privileged. So when you apply to the university, so you need to remember the person who is reading your application is 99.99% is not Indian, right? So their admissions counselor, they are probably making $45,000 to $50,000 as an average money, right? So when yes, they are not supposed to have bias, they are not supposed to have prejudice, but at the end of the day, when they see your application, right, both parents are, professionals, and child from the zip code, they can figure out which school district that you go to, what is the demographic profile, what is the average income of the school, and you ask yourself what perception that you are creating. You are creating a perception of privilege, I think, at this point. So, especially in the aftermath of affirmative action, this is something you need to be very careful of. So, on the left, you will see on fine print a chart. This is the admitted students profile of University of Pennsylvania. And I can tell you the Asians are 28% on University of Pennsylvania, where the population of Asians in the US, I don't know, less than 10%. So that itself sends a strong message. So you have to, you need to figure out how you want to express this, right? There is only one source that you can express. That is your essay. Somehow, right? If you believe that you had to go through hardships in your life, in spite of being born in a stable Indian family, I mean, as an average, right? You need to figure out how to communicate this, and this is not easy. This is deeply personal. It varies from person to person, but you just have to figure out. The other, a more idealistic way, for the students is that in the aftermath of affirmative action, universities they still want to hire enough number of African Americans. They still want to hire enough number of Hispanics, right? So historically, what happened when affirmative action was in present, because the universities could consider race as a factor, right? What they did was, if they want to have enough African American students, they wouldn't necessarily reach out to those African American students are Hispanic students who deserve a better consideration, right? They were interested in filling the quota. They would pretty much recruit, I think, African Americans from Nigeria, who are some of the smartest people I have seen in my life, because the optics still looks pretty good, right? So, and that's what they did. But I think the good thing is that they can no longer do that. But how they are going to recruit, I think nobody knows the answer to that. I think if you are a rising ninth grader, right, I think my recommendation, one of the things that you could do is that, and especially if you believe that you come from a privileged family, privileged background, you figure out, you work with an inner city student, African American or Hispanic student, right, and then figure out how you can help them. So that would be a much better story on your essay than anything else. But this is not easy to do, but this is something you should consider. Any questions on this? Okay, this is exactly what John Roberts said, right? The student must be treated based on his her experiences as an individual, not on the basis of race. This came from John Roberts, right? So this is gospel. This is not going to change in next 10 years, right? We all have to figure out how to deal with this, right? Okay, and California's Proposition 209 banned Affirmation Act in 1996, right? It increased geographical diversity, more Asians, but not racial diversity. Okay, so super selective colleges, anybody is interested, the acceptance rate, right? As you see, the acceptance rate has dwindled, like Columbia University, right? From 6% in 2020 to 3. When I say 2020, this is class of 2020. That means people would have applied on 2016, right? So 2016 it was 6%. Last year it was nearly half, 3.7%. So this number is dwindling, I think, every year. MIT 3.9, I think Johns Hopkins 6.5. I think the chart that you see on the right is Carnegie Mellon. Carnegie Mellon, if you see, Asians are 26%, right? So very high number in Carnegie Mellon. So that's something to consider. Ohio State is less than 7%, and Pitt is 10%. So if you believe that you have the credentials to apply to CMU, but again, by all means, you should apply. But if you want to play it safe, right? If you want to increase your chances, apply to Ohio State, because there are less than 7% Asians. You have a better chance, I think, in that. Okay? Any questions? Okay, move on to the next one. Current population trends. You can see on the top left, the Asian American population in USA, 2000, 10 million, 2019, nearly double, 18.9 million, right? So it's going to be 35 million in next, 25 years. Average SAT scores, bottom left, right? If you see, Asians outscore everybody else in SAT score, right? So it's, and then the one on the right, the only chart on the right, that gives you the percentage of people who attend 4-year colleges, more than any other ethnic group. 64% of Asians go to college. So that's going to play a role, right? In general, the super selective colleges that I discussed, whether it is engineering school, the Ivy Leagues, etc., the average is 24% Asians. So that's something to think about. Okay. Okay, so I will just leave that to your discretion, right? When you apply to colleges, right? So you need to look at all these factors. So what is the reputation of the college, right? What are the research opportunities available to undergraduate students? And also, I think you should think about, what do you want to do after graduate school? Do you want to go to medical school, or do you want to get a PhD in engineering, law school, etc.? So what kind of a pathway it provides to graduate program? How much emphasis on undergraduate education? It's a very important factor. Student to faculty ratio, honors program. More importantly, I think availability of family and friends, right? The children tend to underestimate, I think, the importance of having family and friends close by. But a lot of cases, I mean, after two or 3 weeks of going to college, they will be asking for Thai sadham, right? I think everybody knows what it means, right? Including my daughter, right? So that is the reality. Especially if you are raised in a vegetarian family, yes, you would be longing for that soon, right? So diversity, important factor. Food, very important factor. Safety, internship, and financial aid. Again, the other thing is that each college, they have their own ecosystem. You just have to find out, right? talking about ecosystem, I'll just give you another example, right? Why it's so important. I recently ran across, I think, one of our, family friend. So their son went to Harvard, undergraduate, right? And then he's doing his medical school residency. I asked him, what exactly was your experience at Harvard? I actually asked him, are you still in touch with your high school friends? He said, no, uncle. I said, are you still in touch with your Harvard classmates? He said, no. He said, no, uncle. I asked why. But I thought, undergraduate years is the years that you actually make friendship, right? He said, well, my idea of going to medical school was that, I wanted to, go to medical school. I actually want to practice as a physician. I want to talk to patients. I want to give them prescription, whatever, right? But he said he felt he was a misfit at Harvard because the people who go to Harvard and want to go to medical school, they are not interested in working as a doctor or as engineers, right? They want to change the world. They want to be the next health secretary. They want to maybe run World Health Organization, or they want to get a Nobel Prize in medicine, right? He said, I didn't really feel comfortable. I don't have any friends that I'm connected with Harvard. That was pretty unusual, for me, because in undergraduate year is the time that you form friendship. If you don't make any friends those 4 years, then you really need to question, did you really go to the right college, right? So there are so many subtleties that you need to be aware of, right? Anyway, I will just skip this. That's the next one. Okay, what is the return on investment? That's the very question to ask. So how do you measure ROI, right? So when we say ROI, what comes to everybody's mind? You can be free. What is ROI? Anybody?
Get the best job after, get the good salary after completing under.
That's what everybody thinks. ROI is money, right? There is more to that, right? ROI can be knowledge. ROI can be happiness. ROI can be peace of mind. ROI can be service to humanity. ROI can be power. ROI can be, running for office, right? So you have to ask yourself, what is the ROI? Everybody, it's money. I agree. I get that. It is money to me, is money to everybody else. But you cannot select a major or go to a college based upon money alone. Money is a very important factor, but it should not be the only factor. That would be a mistake, right? You need to figure out. Granted, it's not easy for an 18-year-old to fully figure this out. It's nearly impossible, right? I still don't know what I want to do at this stage, right? So how about an 18-year-old, right? But you at least should ask yourself that question. You have to reflect on this, right? What exactly you want to do. But that's the minimum. Some people are so fortunate that, by their 18, they know exactly what they want to do. But it's a kind of a rarity. But that's a question you should ponder, at least. You may or may not find the answer. By all means, ponder, right?
I wanted to answer that. I wanted to say it's how long you can postpone taking any medicine, lifetime medicines, and survive without being healthy.
Exactly. That's an excellent point. I think there is a famous saying in English and in India that when wealth is lost, nothing is lost. When health is lost, something is lost. But when character is lost, everything is lost, right? But again, that should not prevent you from applying to whatever college that you want to. But you should at least ask yourself this question, right? Okay, so this is so I'm going to show some names here, right? These names may or may not represent the people in this room, right? Okay, let's take a few. They're a fictitious name, right? So let's take somebody may name Raghu, right? It may or may not be me, right? I never took any AP courses. I never took any honors courses, right? I went to North Allegheny School District, right? I got mostly A's and I got few B's. My GPA will be less than 4.0. There is no way around this, right? Will not be within the top 10%. Then Ratikant, he's not here, he just left, right? My friend Ratikant, right? So Ratikant never took any AP courses, never took any honors courses, but he got A's, right? He got 4.0, but he will not be within the top 10% in North Allegheny. Tulsiram is not here. Okay, he's there, okay. Tulsiram took some college prep courses, some honors courses, some APs, right? He got a mixture of A's and B's. His GPA was less than 4, more than 4, less than 4.3. He still will not be within the top 1% in a typical North Allegheny. Take Malini G, right? So she took a lot more APs, lot more A's, right? GPA was 4.0, less than 4.5. Malini G will be within the top 1%. Last but not the least, who else but Soundarajan, right? We're sitting there. Soundarajan G took lot of 18 AP courses. He aced everything. That is not surprising at all, right? So, and then his GPA will be 4.7. He will be within the top 1%. This is the profile of a typical North Allegheny student. And if you take 18 AP courses, if you aced everything, I think in about any courses, any school district in Pittsburgh, yes, you would be like 4.7. Soundarajanji, you are too silent.
Thank you for your confidence in me. That's all I can say.
He found out his new GPA and he's wondering when did that happen.
But that doesn't surprise me at all.
One more question here,
yeah,
a comment.
Okay, yeah.
Comment, just, saying, Malini, it's no surprise that, you could have, done that. I've seen you in school, so she has aced.
That doesn't surprise me at all.
I did not invite Mekala here to say this. She's my high school friend, so she's being very kind to me here.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. So, okay, this is a very key slide, right? So you see two pictures here. So you see circles, right? On the left, you see the circles going, up and down a little bit, right? On the right, all the circles are in the same line. Their diameter matches with the line on the center, right? So let's talk about one on the right, right? If a child knows exactly what he or she wants to do when they apply to the college, absolutely no confusion, computer engineering, finance, whatever, medicine, right? And they have the grades to match, and they have the extracurriculars to match, and then everything is smooth, right? There is no experimentation at all in college, right? Everything goes exactly as planned. It doesn't happen often, but it does happen on some occasions, right? It's ideal. The one on the left, you see, the circles going up and forth. A little bit of experimentation, involved. Maybe the child wants to study, mechanical engineering, but after first year decides for civil engineering, right? So a little bit of up and down, but I think eventually you would reach the destination. So again, I can reflect on, I think, what I did with my daughter, right? So nowadays, I think one of the most popular majors is bioengineering and biomedical engineering. And why they are popular is that if you study bioengineering, you have a shot at medical school. But what if you don't get into medical school, right? I mean, that's a question I think anybody aspiring to be a physician should ask themselves. It is a matter of simple risk management, right? So bioengineering provides you still a career in engineering, which gives you a pretty good remuneration, right? So if you want to study bioengineering, I mean, number one is that you really want to go to medical school. You are using that as a backup option. Number two is that you want to study bioengineering, you want to get a PhD, you want to be a faculty, you want to start your company, you want to change the world by inventing something else, right? The third is, well, I want to study bioengineering, but I want to work in a company that makes devices, right? So you need to figure out where you are. So when my daughter applied initially, it was bioengineering, right? But then after she got admitted, I had a discussion with her, why do you want to study bioengineering? He said, do you want to go to medical school? No, I don't want to be a doctor. That's done, right? I said, do you have the stamina to get a PhD, which is, basically 11 years after your high school? She said, I'm not sure I have the stamina, right? Then the only reason you are studying bioengineering is that, well, you actually want to go and find a job. So I said, you don't have to, if you want to work in a company that makes medical devices, you could be a mechanical engineer and still work there. You don't need to have a bioengineering degree. So he changed her mind. So, and she switched to computer science at University of Pennsylvania pretty early on. So the reason I'm saying that the earlier you identify what you are good at and what you exactly like, the better. So nowadays, because of the highly competent applicant pool that we have here, a lot of universities, they at least want you to have a reasonable idea about what you want to do. In fact, I think everybody is familiar with common application, right? So yeah, common application, yeah, if you apply to Rice or Carnegie Mellon, they would ask, what is the major that you have interest, right? So if you want to study electrical engineering, then you would say yes, engineering. Then under subcategory, you would say electrical engineering. But they know that there is a fancy term for that. Electrical and computer engineering, computer science, they are all called impacted majors. So the impacted majors means that the universities have more applicants than seats. So the impact. So if you don't get into your impacted major, then it will be hard to switch in those universities. I'll just take, I think, University of California, San Diego as an example. San Diego is probably an extreme case, but I think most universities will follow them. If you apply to San Diego, because again, like I said, because of Qualcomm and the tech revolution is happening in San Diego, you have to say that you will be applying to the School of Engineering. But even more than that, within the School of Engineering, you have to say which branch that you want to choose, mechanical, electrical, civil, computer science, right? This is exactly like the way it used to be in India. They want you to be that specific. And not only that, you cannot just say, well, you actually want to study computer engineering, but you think if you say you are applying to civil engineering, your chances are better. It does not work like that, because then if you say you want to study civil engineering, they would like to see evidence in your extracurricular activities that did you do any projects related to civil engineering, and there are checks and balances in place. So I think at the end of the day, the question to ask is that, what is the ideal case? Ideal case is that the person knows exactly what he or she wants to do, right? And he gets into exactly the same major in exactly the same college. That's the ideal case, right? But what if that doesn't work out? Then you should have a backup plan. So the backup plan is that then you need to be asking yourself, do I take CMU as an example, right? If you like computer engineering so much, you need to ask yourself, do you want to study computer engineering at CMU, or am I prepared to deal with studying civil engineering at CMU? It is easier to get in civil engineering than in computer engineering in CMU, right? Or I do not like civil engineering at all. In that case, you are better off studying computer engineering at Penn State or UPenn, right? So that's the question I think everybody needs to find the answer. Any questions on this? Yeah, go ahead.
especially with the AI. Sorry, were you able to hear?
Yeah,
so
can you repeat the question again?
Yeah, I was wondering if you can shed some light on the fields that would be in demand in future, especially with the introduction of AI and like it's progressing very fast.
Exactly. In fact, I'm writing a book on this. I'm about 90% done.
Oh wow.
But I would. It's a complex topic, but I would give you a quick summary, right? The question is that how AI is going to impact jobs in the future, and how we can get prepared. Let's take I think ChatGPT as an example, right? So ChatGPT is what they call a generative AI model, right? It is going to generate text and speeches and audio, right? So those professions that are involved with the generation of text and video are going to be impacted big time. Legal assistance for some time, right? So the entire legal profession is built on what? Generating words, generating text, right? So that is going to be impacted. I think in about a few years down the road, a lot of legal assistants will be out of work, right? Because ChatGPT is going to do the work. But at the same time, interestingly enough, the number of lawyers is actually going to increase. Why? Because the ChatGPT is going to be doing what the legal assistants were doing. The cost of lawsuit is going to come down quite a bit. That means there will be more lawsuits, there will be more lawyers. I mean, that's one of the ironies of ChatGPT. If you are into, if you want to be, if you want to study medicine, that is going to have a big impact from AI, but certain fields are going to have a greater impact than others. Those fields of medicine that relates to processing of images, big impact. Radiology, pathology, and ophthalmology, right? So I would, if you want to study medicine, by all means you should, but I would really ask you to give a lot of thought before you choose radiology. Because in fact, one of the pioneers of AI, Jeffrey Hinton, who developed the deep learning models, so he actually said on record that in future we have to stop training radiologists and ophthalmologists because AI can do the work. So certain aspects, yes, will be impacted. Some people say, even the idea of coding will take a different route in the future. I think chip design, electrical and computer engineering is a great field to be in at this point, because more AI, there will be more chips, more GPUs. Is actually a great field. Other great field, material science. So material science. Remember, what drives the AI is autonomous vehicles, right? So Tesla cannot perform without AI, but Tesla also needs batteries, right? What drives the need for batteries? Global warming, right? So battery technology is going to be a huge field, which is material science. In fact, when I went to California, I went and talked to one of my best friends, who started his own, battery startup company. So interestingly, he's worth like $300 million now. So in Silicon Valley, he has a PhD in electrochemical engineering. He actually said, yeah, I mean, battery development, material science is a huge field. By all means, you should pursue. If you study chemical engineering, I think you should. The oil and gas companies, I think, will still be around, I think, for the next 20 years. But I would hesitate before I commit myself to an oil and gas company, because the question is that the world becomes electric in 20 years. How is the Exxon and Shell going to survive? These are all, I think, questions, way down in the future. So this itself is more than a topic. But I would encourage you to read my book when it is published. This is covered in detail. Okay, so selection of career path, everything is risk and reward. I think generally Indian community tends to stick with, I think, engineering, medicine, business and law. I would just go over the pros and cons. Engineering, in 4 years you have a degree. Say electrical engineering, computer science, they have more opportunities than other fields like civil engineering, right? But if you absolutely love civil engineering, if you want to build bridges, by all means you should study civil engineering because there are opportunities. Engineers can get MBA and become leaders, right? There's no question about it, right? I mean, Sundar Pichai, Google's CEO, he is a material science graduate from IIT, but he is a CEO now, right? There's nothing is going to stop you. You could teach in universities, get a PhD and teach. Pays pretty well. Requires aptitude in math and physics. Some of the other issues to consider, there are more jobs for computer science and electrical engineering than for civil engineering. But of course, I think even in fields like civil engineering in future, AI will be extensively used. So there is no way around this. Healthcare, 11 years of medicine, especially if you want to go to medical school. But if you want to be a cardiologist or an oncologist, you are talking about additional 5 years. So basically, you are talking about 15 to 16 years after your high school. So if you really like medicine, just make sure that you cannot do medicine for the sake of money. I can tell you there are other ways to make money, right? Medicine, it doesn't have to be through medicine, right? So make sure that you have the passion, you have the mindset to serve the humanity, and then you have the stamina. You have the stamina for 15 years. I mean, that's something to consider. But on the plus side, the average starting pay is the highest. The trend is away from general practitioner to specialist. Admission is most difficult and requires the right mindset and staying power. If you want to go to medical school, the question is, should you go to super selective colleges or you go to less selective colleges? If you go to super selective colleges, if you don't get financial aid, you are going to end up spending $300,000 to $400,000 on your undergraduate education, right? Then you are talking about additional $300,000 to $400,000 for medical school. So you need to be asking yourself, do I like this subject so much that I am prepared to pay $800,000? So that's a simple question. That goes back to what is the ROI, right? So business or law, 6 to 7 years, right? Some areas pay more than others, like intellectual property law requires an engineering degree, pays a lot, but not much human contact. It's a lot of reading and a lot of writing. You have to make sure that you have the mindset. And the most important thing of all the profession, especially in legal profession, you should have the mindset to take sides. If you don't have the mindset to take sides, if you take everything in black and white, maybe law is not the profession for you. Right? Law is all about taking sides. Sometimes you take sides for the criminals, but that you have to be ready to do that. Okay, if you want to study science, right? Anybody is interested in studying physics, chemistry, mathematics, psychology, biology? I mean, biology, of course, they want to go to medical school, right? Nobody? Okay, so, but I will still say this. If you decide to study basic science, right, you cannot stop at undergraduate degree. You have to get a PhD. Because you would not be accepted as, I have a master's degree in physics, right? Then I took my master's degree in electrical engineering. I can tell you, I can do the work that PhD physicists can do, but they would never accept me as a physicist because I don't have a PhD. That's the way it is. Right? That is, this is not something your guidance counselor will actually tell you because they don't have an idea about this, right? If you want to study basic science, by all means do, but your terminal degree should be a PhD, right? Okay, take AP Calculus Physics courses. It's a must for engineering. Computer Science, ECE are most competitive majors. AP Biology is a must for healthcare. In general, students should demonstrate rigor in coursework, which is AP. Okay? Don't ignore ROI and your retirement savings, right? And that's another. I keep on. I mean that I think I heard that like 25 years ago when I was driving. I think I pretty much followed that, right? So we have to prioritize over saving for your retirement and saving for your kids' college. Prioritize your retirement, right? Money will come somehow or other for your college, right? But not for your retirement. So think about that. Roadmap for common application process. So I think if you are not already done that, make sure that you get a common application ID for yourself, right? You can, even as a parent, you can still get a common application ID for yourself independent of your child's ID. So when you do that, you would have a look and feel of how the common application looks like, you know. What are the things that they are going to ask for? I strongly encourage, I think, everybody to do that. So how you do that? Maintain the GPA, right? Your extracurricular activities, they are all logged into your common application. Take SAT, ACT, etc. Recommendations will automatically come from the guidance counselor, essays, etc. Okay, so this is a very important topic, especially because the Supreme Court has said they will no longer consider race, right? So how do you project yourself? How do you present yourself, right? So think of, you see a loaf of bread here, right? So what does a loaf of bread, has to do with an essay, right? So especially for students, right? Imagine you are in a competition. The goal is to make bread, right? So there are two people, let's say, person A and person B, right? So I am person A. So I go to the competition. So I make the best possible bread, right? It tastes so good, but I didn't slice the bread, right? I just showed the judge the entire loaf, right? So the judge is going to look at that. Okay, it looks good, like a really nice, brownish tinge, right? Everything else. Then there's a person B, let's say Aditya, right? Aditya is person B, right? He is a lot smarter than I am, right? So what he does is that he makes the same bread, the same quality, the same ingredients, right? So he takes this beautiful sharp knife, right? He slices the bread, right? Sorry. He slices the bread, right? When you slice the bread, suddenly you are exposing the bread's texture, its feel, its color, its smell, right? You take it to the judge. Malini ji is the judge, right? He takes it to the Malini. She sees my bread and Aditya's bread, right? She smells. He likes bread. She smells. It smells so great. She feels like eating it. So which bread she is going to select as a winner is Aditya's bread, right? The essay works exactly the same thing, right? You have to slice your life, right? You need to figure out which particular attribute of you that is not shown in the essay and figure out a way to tell a great story and write the essay. This is more of an art than a science, right? So you are slicing the bread, but this is a very key aspect. How do you slice the bread? You do not want to show certain aspects of your life to the judge, right? Same way you slice the bread. Let's say, the bread is so badly cooked, burnt at one point, you don't want to show that, right? But it's okay to show some, impurities, some dirt, right? That shows credibility. You have to pick and choose that part of your life that you want to slice, right? the admissions officer, right, scans the essays, right? You have to write to grab their attention. When is the essay more important, right? If you apply to, let's say, your GPA is so good, everything is fantastic, right? You apply to a college which has a lower expectation of your GPA. So in that case, your essay may not really matters, right? So where it will matter is that you apply to a very competitive school, other things being equal, the essay may tilt things in your favor, right? How you write is more important, right, than what you write, right? Avoid cliches, right? Show depth, not breadth. Do not describe your 18 years of life in your essay. It will be a big mistake, right? And write the essay yourself. Very important point, right? Some of the cliched topics to avoid, like things like, well, and I have been playing soccer for the 7 years, and one day I was playing soccer and I slipped and I broke my ankle, and then because of hard work and dedication, I became the school champion. The admission is obviously going to think, really, you see so many people breaking their ankles, right? You are not going to stand out, right? The other point, discovering yourself in a trip. You say, well, I went to India, I went to Tamil Nadu, I saw all this temple, I went to, Tiruvannamalai temple, whatever, right? And I saw all those people praying, and suddenly I realized that, well, people all over the world are the same. They all have faith. I mean, it's, I think you are not in the running, right? So what is the best way to judge an essay? This is something I think you should memorize this in your head. Like, let's pick an example, right? Arnima writes an essay, right? So she writes the essay. She reveals a certain part of her that is not shown, and then she drops the essay at school, right? But without her name. So her best friend picks that paper, and she would know it is Arnima. That's a very simple test that you can do. Certain topics you brainstorm, you draft, you review, you rewrite, organize, finalize, and you show, not tell. Do not tell, you show, right? I have a blog about college admission where I have written, I think, two blogs about how to write essay. I think you can, by all means, I would encourage to read. I would say is that students have to write the essays themselves, but it has to be reviewed by the parents and critique. The critique has to be very honest. It can be even brutal at this point, right? When daughter Veda, she applies to, I think, about 12 or 13 colleges. I remember October 2021, it's like, she will write the essay, it will be on Google Form, and I will be sitting with, my laptop, my wife will be sitting with other laptop. I mean, tempers will flare. I mean, teenagers cannot stand, even you, right? And I think you handled it very well. I'm just giving you a lot of credit. The critique has to be very, very honest and upright, right? You need to think yourself as an admissions officer, and then you have to be absolutely 100% comfortable the way it is written. And then you turn this over to some other third person, then everybody else feels the same, then I think you are on the right track. So again, the more competitive the schools are, the more important the essays will be. Okay, any questions on this? Okay, another important slide, right? This is the way the admissions committee works here, right? The admission is the holistic admission process, right? Any college, I'll just take Carnegie Mellon as an example because it is close by, right? So 40 to 45,000 people are going to apply to Carnegie Mellon every year, from Pine Richland, Murraysville, North Allegheny, etc., right? They all will have a different way of calculating their the GPA. So CMA has to deal with 45, let's say, overall 45,000 applicants, throughout the world, not just from the USA, right? They need to rescale this. So they have their own algorithm, which nobody knows how it works, but I can assure you it is fair. The process is basically fair, but it is imperfect, right? They will rescale our GPA, and then if you look into the brownish bar on the bottom, top right, right? Let's say, North Allegheny, 18 APs, all A's, 4.7 GPA, they will be right there, right? On the bottom, on the bottom right, the brown color. Let's say, then the question is, a student applies from Mississippi, right? African American student applies from rural Mississippi. The school offers, or even whatever, an Indian student, right? Applies from Mississippi. The school offers no AP courses, right? But the student got A's in everything. So his GPA is 4.0. So how is 4.0 going to be compared against 4.6? So that's the question there, right? So the universities, they are obligated to treat everybody exactly the same. In other words, if the school in Mississippi, they offer no AP courses, therefore the student could not take any AP courses, but he got A's in everything, he would be treated exactly the same way, like for example, Arnima will be treated, who went to a very good school in Pittsburgh and got a 4.7 GPA. I mean, that's the way it is scaled, right? They all also have to struggle with how they can rescale GPA from people in India. There are significant international students, right? That is our academic index. Every university will do that. They all will do it slightly differently. But again, I can assure you the process is very fair, but it is imperfect. Nothing is perfect, right? More importantly, or equally important, personal achievement index. So how is this calculated, right? So the personal achievement index, so that includes your teacher's recommendation, your extracurricular activities, your leadership, your community service, unfortunately, or your legacy, do you play sports, etc., right? They will look into all those things, but I would reinforce this, the most important thing they are going to look for is commitment to a single activity. You are better off doing one activity over 7 years over doing 7 activities in 1 year. I mean, there is absolutely no question about it. So the higher the commitment, the better it is. They don't expect you to win the Nobel Prize for peace, right? When you show our extracurricular activities, all they are looking for, did you make an impact on somebody else's life, right? The impact doesn't have to be starting a non-profit organization. I know North Allegheny, I mean, lot of students, they want to start their non-profit organization at the 9th grade, sometimes even 8th grade. But with the single goal of making their application looks better. Do not do that. I mean, you start non-profit organization only if you are genuinely passionate about the cause. Otherwise, don't even go there. Right? It's unethical, in my opinion. So they do that, and then based upon commitment, did you make an impact on somebody else's life, etc. Then they will, they will rank. The other aspect about the extracurricular activities, something that is least understood by the Indian community. Let's take summer programs, right? So you have two choices. Let's say you have a couple of choices, right? One choice is that I think most of you should be familiar with Johns Hopkins University's, I think, Center for Talented Youth summer program. Anybody familiar with that? CTY? Okay, you are right. So CTY is a prestigious program, but if you have to go to CTY, then you have to pay something like $8,000, $9,000, for summer, right? Your other option is that instead of pursuing that, you find work at Costco, right? You work in Costco for 2 years. Which is better? Anybody? Absolutely. Work at Costco. Why? Because two reasons. You are already a privileged Indian American, right? You can afford $10,000 to pursue your passion, where you could have worked at Costco to make a difference. So if you pay $10,000 for a summer program, you have to take a very, very serious look at it, whether you want to spend the money and what difference it makes. There are certain exceptions to that. What are the exceptions? You could pay whatever, $5,000, $4,000 to a summer program that is a college level program. In other words, that program is open for undergraduate students in a college. That's much better. That is exactly what my daughter did. So there was a program that offered, Rice University offered. That program is open only for third year college students in data science. But she was able to get in, but we paid $5,000, but that did not adversely impact her, because although we paid money, there was no other option, right? So working is the least understood in the Indian community. It is very well respected in the academic, in the confines of admissions offices. The other aspect is that is working better than volunteering. Of course, working is better, because volunteering is not a bad thing. But if you volunteer, there is no commitment. Why I volunteered at the Temple Education Committee, right? If you don't show up to the educational county meeting, no, I'm not going. There is no loss of money. There is no loss of name, right? I can still come to the temple. But if I have to work at Costco, if we don't go to Costco, there are implications. I'm not going to get paid, right? Working equals making money. It also means responsibility. So a 16-year-old or a 17-year-old should show financial responsibility. It's a huge, huge plus, right? So if you can do that, by all means, you should do that. What is the absolute ideal job? Is if you, let's say you want to study computer science, right? Just pick an example, right? You are passionate about computer science, you are able to find an internship, whether at the University of Pittsburgh or Carnegie Mellon or any IT companies, right? Then there is a perfect alignment with your interest and your extracurricular activities, and you are also working, right? So that means responsibility. That's a huge plus. One of the best science programs to go in the world is, if you may already know that, it's a Hillman's science program at the University of Pittsburgh. Everybody knows about Hillman? Anybody do not know about Hillman? Okay, yeah, the Hillman Science Academy, it's a merit-based academy. It's for, it's in the Department of Biology at the University of Biology or Biomedical at the University of Pittsburgh. It's a great program. It is offered only on merits. It takes about 7 weeks. It's very, very, very difficult to get in. But if you get in, I think it will open a lot of doors. It's a very difficult program to get in. By all means, you should pursue that. Okay. All right, 15 minutes. Okay. Okay, I think I didn't really say, okay, how the committee makes a decision, right? Let's say you apply to Carnegie Mellon University, right? So there, the entire country is divided in terms of, I think, 5 zones. Okay, Northeast, I think Mid-Atlantic, Mid-Central, Central and West Coast, right? So, so the 5 different, pieces, of the country, and then each they are all called zones. So those zones, each zone typically will have about 2 admissions officers, right? So, so when you, as soon as you finish your application, usually do that at the end of December. They would have come back from their Christmas vacations, and beginning January, in a cold winter, they will take your essays and applications to home, right? So sometimes, whatever, they may be watching TV and reading it, whatever, right? So they would read that, and then if you're, I mean, so the universities have a certain profile, right? Based upon the past history, for CMU, it may be like, a scale GPA, for somebody to get into computer science will be 4.0. If it is 3.9, they probably will not get in, right? That's CMU, because CMU computer science is the most difficult thing. But it may be different for other branches, right? That is 4.4, and our extracurricular is pretty good. Then they might say, well, I'm going to accept this candidate. It takes an average of 10 minutes for the admissions officer to read your essay. I think students keep in mind the entire 18 years of life will be decided in a matter of 10 minutes. So that's how it works, right? And then if they are unsure, they'll put this on the wait list. And then if you are nowhere close to their past data or current expectation, then you'll be rejected. This is step one, right? The next phase is that once this is, they will go back and forth in this. Then finally they all will make a decision. So let's say CMU admits about, I don't know, 1,400, 1,500 students per year. Since there are 5 zones, there may be a collection of 2,500 people who are in the admit list. Obviously the university only has 1,400 seats to offer, but then they will meet with the director of admissions. So, and the final decisions will be made. I think that will be based upon another acronym, institutional priorities, right? What is an institutional priority? So if you look into this slide, is the right-hand side, there's the left-hand side, there's the middle. So ignore the middle for the time being, right? So the 8 factors for students: GPA, SAT, athletics, dance, music, essay, ECs, community service, leadership. These are the 8 possible things that students can offer. Then what about the institutions, right? So academics, right? So which is essentially your GPA and SAT, and to some extent your recommendation from the teacher. Athletics play a huge role, more than anything else, especially on the super selective colleges. So this is one area where I think the Indian community falls short, in terms of athletics. There are, the Ivy Leagues, they need to have 22 football players, right? They need to have, 20 ice hockey players and 15 fencing players, 4 tennis players. Lacrosse is a big thing on prestigious schools, right? And those seats are almost always filled by whites, right? So we are not anywhere in that league, right? So that is something to our disadvantage. Again, legacy, special talents, geographical location, international students, and special cases. All those things factor. So I do remember, I went to one of my nephews, Harvard, graduation, like, 10, 15 years ago. He introduced, I think, 2 of his friends. So one was one of the richest gold miners in the world. His father was one of the richest. Zambia's, he probably owns half the gold mines in Zambia, right? So he came to Harvard. The other student was a middle-class runner from South Africa. The third friend was an Ethiopian refugee, right? So they have to accommodate a wide spectrum of students all over the world, not just from the US. So those are special cases. And then international students. There are a lot of Indian students applying and students from China. So the universities have a very difficult job, especially the super selective ones. So they have to balance the 8 attributes that you have to offer with their own institutional priorities. So what they do is that, hypothetically speaking, right, you apply to Columbia University in New York. So initially, the Mid-Atlantic counselor has admitted you in accept list, but the dean of admission looks at it. He figures out, well, so and so, just pick my name. Raghu is a pretty good student, but he doesn't really play football, right? I think last year Columbia lost the football game with Yale, I really think I need a super quarterback, right? So he's going to pick somebody perhaps with less academic credentials, but still good enough for Columbia, and he would going to offer that seat to him. I mean, there is no way around this. I think at the end of the day, especially on the super selective institutes, whether you get in or not, I think it boils down to luck. I think at the end of the day, I mean, it's just you can flip a coin. So that's exactly the reason your search should include a variety of institutes. Okay. Some other clarifications, right? GPA is necessary but not sufficient. GPA increases with more APs. We all talked about that. I'll just skip through this. One could major in engineering and go to medical school. Not ideal. It's brutal, but it's possible. The expectations are higher for Indians, true. Top schools, UT Austin, Georgia Tech, UNC are actually as difficult to get as the super selective colleges. Common misconceptions and clarifications, right? What works for one person may not for others. Common among Indian community, we tend to take decision, well, so-and-so paying so much for college, so-and-so going to this. It doesn't work like that. Computer science and another misconception. Computer science and information are very similar, but very different. If you really like programming, right, but you are not necessarily particular about studying extensive theoretical models in mathematics, then you are better off with information science, not with computer science. My wife has a PhD in computer science. I can tell you she did not write a single line of code in her PhD. Not a single line. It's all theory, right? Veda is studying computer science, and she can tell you that how much role linear algebra and differential equation are playing in her computer science. It's a huge thing. I'm not saying code is not necessary. Code is necessary, but computer science, real computer science major is a lot more than coding, right? Robotics is a subfield of computer science. It is not a subfield of mechanical electrical engineering. I worked at CMU Robotics Institute. I mean, I had the same misconception. I thought robotics was mechanical. First thing I learned was robotics is a computer science problem. It's not a mechanical problem. Everything that needs to be invented mechanically has been invented in robots. It is the brain that matters. That's where computer science and AI. Okay. Your application will be ready in 10 minutes, right? We discussed this. Indian Americans are successful and affluent. You need to be careful how you project your image in the application. Clarification, financial aid, right? There are only 6 ways to pay college.
Raghu Garu, can I ask a question as a parent?
Yeah, sure.
Well, my son is still not ready to be in college, but you bring up a good point, like being affluent and making kids work and be responsible. That's like a fine balance, right? We as, at least I as Indian parent, don't want my son to be working in a Costco and seeing early money, because I don't want him to be distracted with money.
Okay,
I want him to be focused on education.
Okay.
So how do you bring that fine balance, but how do you also make them show on the essay that they make the difference and they have made an impact, yeah, and they are different and they're responsible? Because it's like there is no it's such a gray area, right? It's not like white and black. You cannot say go work and then come back and study and still we are going to be okay, like we can pay for your college education. So it's like how do you balance that?
Yeah, sure. It's a very good question. So we can simplify this question in a different way. I mean, let's go back to my previous slide, right? So what was that? The one I showed. Okay, this slide, right? So this, right? So okay, so the academics index, I think we're all clear. It's a number, it's easily calculated, right? So the personal achievement index, at the end of the day, what matters is that how did you spend your time outside your school, right? There are 2 different questions, right? One is, how did you spend your time outside your class but in the school? That's one question, right? Next question is that, how did you spend your time outside your school but within your community? That's the second question, right? The third question is that, how did you spend your time outside your school and outside your community? How did you reach out to the mainstream? Those are the three questions, right? So at the end of the day, I think all that matters, again, like I said, is that commitment to a single activity is a huge thing, right? And how old is your son?
He's 11 right
11.
now.
You have way to go. There would be nothing like if you can stay, if you can find out which activity that you wants to pursue and stay with that activity for, I don't know, anywhere between 4 to 7 years. That would be great. And that would, from that, he would be able to write a pretty good essay. If he, I mean, I know your son likes music, very much. I mean, that's one thing that he can write, right? I mean, if he continues on music, from middle school, I mean, so that is his passion in addition to an academic. I mean, you could find out a topic, how did he perform in one concert, and I mean, that's all. I think ultimately, I think, like I was saying before, nobody expects a child to run a non-profit organization. It looks very, I don't know, suspicious, to me, right? And then nobody expects a science to win the Nobel Peace Prize, at that age. I think at that age, they are aware that they are still a child, right? All they are looking for is, yes, they have all this talent, but are they using their talent to help somebody else? I mean, that's all. I think that's all I can say at this point. But again, if you want to discuss this in detail, one-on-one, sure, we can. Did I?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, all right. Okay, there are only 6 ways, okay? I will tell you the 5 ways. Let's see if anybody can say the 6th way. Students pay, right? Parents pay, student loan, need-based financial aid, and then merit scholarship. What is the 6th way? Say it again. Anybody? I think students should be able to answer this question. All right, 6th way, you serve in the army. Right? Everything is free. Right? The army will pay the entire 4 years of college. If it is $400,000, they will pay $400,000. Right? It's not something that is pursued by the Indian community. Right? Financial aid is need-based, whereas scholarships are merit-based. You can often hear people say that they got scholarship, but then you need to think about that, right? So need-based financial aid is different from merit scholarship. None of the Ivy Leagues, Carnegie Mellon, Rice, Northwestern, they will not offer any merit scholarship because they think that everybody who comes to their college deserves are the same. So they are not going to treat you differently. They wouldn't. CMU and Rice, they probably offer like 4 or 5 scholarships, but they are not full ride. They probably would say like $5,000 per year, something like that. State colleges offer a better alternative. This is the most important thing. A family making $200,000 to $225,000 will not get any need-based financial aid. This is an open secret. This is nothing new. I mean, you can look into any college's website and find out. I have given you the financial aid profile from Rice University and other super selective colleges. As you can see, a family making $65,000 and below, Rice is completely free if they can get in. 65 to 130K, full tuition, right? Well, you only pay room and board. 100 to 200K, half tuition. After 200K, you pay the whole money. There is no way around this. There are strategies that you can explore, but this itself is it's a complex topic. I think if anybody is interested, I can talk about that future. But we can probably do this in about 1 hour. How to pick the right college? I think we are coming to an end of this. So you see 2 funnels, right? One green funnels, one on the top right and one on the bottom right, right? So the top right, you see an arrow pointing towards to the top of the funnel, right? In the bottom funnel, you see the arrow pointing to the bottom, right? So the top funnel represents the universities, right? So universities, they do such a great sales job. They pull in people from everywhere, like 50,000, like University of California, Los Angeles, 100,000 applicants, right? They pull all those people. Everybody pays $100 fee. Okay, 100,000 people apply, $10 million. They got their money, right? Then they funnel that. They have their own institutional priorities, and then whoever comes to the bottom is minuscule, right? As a parent, you need to be very careful about this because universities are doing this, for their own benefit. They make $10 million every year, right? Students and parents, unfortunately, they don't start from the top. They start from the bottom. So if you start from the bottom, you are going to limit your choices. You have not done due diligence. You may be setting yourself for disappointment or setting yourself to pay more than you should, right? So students also should start from the top, sorry. They should start from the top, which requires more homework, more legwork, more research, etc. But at the end of the day, you are better off, right? Okay, so how do you pick the college? I think somebody asked the question, right? So round 1, you should have an idea about the career that you want to do. Do you want to study engineering, medicine, business, etc.? So how do you? I think by 12th grade, I think you should have a pretty good idea. It seems like most people have that idea, I think, at this point. Then important step, you should discuss that with the parents and teachers. More importantly, discuss that with actually people who have done that, right? If you want to study computer science, talk to people who are working as computer scientists, who are working as programmers. Do not decide that by yourself, right? And take the hardest courses that you can handle. Based upon your credentials, affordability, preferences, and career interests, start list a few colleges. Let's say 0 to 30, right? And then round 3, you actually visit the college. Do not limit yourself to YouTube videos or Reddit, right? Actually go there. Round 4, talk to guidance counselor and find out. Very important step. Round 4 is one of the most important steps, right? Find out the past acceptance rate and the average profile of admitted students. Going back to North Allegheny, right? North Allegheny parents have access to Naviance. Everybody knows about Naviance? Any parents knows about Naviance, right? Okay, so you know about Naviance, right? So Naviance is a website. If a school subscribes to Naviance, then you could log into Naviance with your parental ID, and the Naviance is going to tell you the past acceptance rate of students from your college. It's a very, very important piece of information, right? They will tell you what is their stat scores, what is their GPA, etc. But what they will not tell you, it is what is their personal achievement index, their extracurricular activity, that you have no way of finding it out. So Naviance is a good place to start. So say you were, again, I'm going back to North Allegheny, right? You go to North Allegheny, if you are like 4.4 GPA, SAT is 1500, then I think then you have a fair shot at Carnegie Mellon, maybe 30 to 40% chance of getting into Carnegie Mellon. But that may be, this is on the conservative side. because North Allegheny or Navians does not account for the fact that you are Asian. You need to account for that. You need to recalibrate your numbers based upon your Indian privilege, for lack of better terms, right? So you need to be very cautious and very conservative how you select that. And once you do that, you then visit the colleges and then attend the admission session. It can be online, and then you are down to 2. And then last round, talk to guidance counselor. Okay, we talked about that. Finalize the colleges, right? Okay, this is how you do that, right? Let's say you want to do 15 schools, right? You put them into 3 buckets: safety school, reach school, and dream school, right? Let's talk about dream school, right? Dream school is the one you absolutely 100% want to go, right? But you need to be within the ballpark of the past acceptance rate for that dream school in the context of your high school, right? Just going with an example. But again, to be cautious and to be conservative, allow for the fact that you are Indian, right? Then reach school, your GPA should be greater than what the typical reach school expects. For example, Carnegie Mellon could be your dream school. Your reach school could be University of Pittsburgh, right? Then yeah, their expectation of your GPA is little less than Carnegie Mellon's expectation. Like if people with 4.2 got into Pitt, and if you are 4.4, then yeah, I think you are likely to get into Pitt. Safety school, it has to be much better than what what that school typically requires. So this is requires some thinking and planning and some trial and error. Of course, parents and students have to be involved. So any questions on this? This is a very important slide. In fact, this is what the entire lecture is all about. How do you pick the college? Okay.
So typically, like I know this answer varies for this question, but how many number of colleges that one should normally? How much is too much? How much is too less? Like typically, like 10 colleges. Thank you. Right. So 10 colleges. So, I mean, 20 is too much, or I mean, based on those you have listed: safety, reach, and dream. Typically, what have you normally seen?
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, good question. I think nowadays with the advent of common application, the number of applications have skyrocketed. Right. Common applications have been around 15 years. Right. So it lends itself, for you to apply to multiple college. I think nowadays the typical average is about 15. Right. But I think the more important question is that. I think it's more important to apply to the right college than to 15 wrong colleges. I mean, that's a fact, right? So finding the right college is important. I mean, statistically, does your average increase as you apply more? Maybe marginally. That is statistics, right? But you have to balance that with other factor. And what is the other factor? Is that what is your child's course load at 12th grade, right? How far they are on essay, right? How much they can handle the stress. If they apply to 20 colleges, then there is a chance that none of the applications are perfect, right? So that it's a very, it's actually a very, it's a very thin line, and also yes, one common application essay can be sent to 15 colleges, but on the other hand, all the 15 colleges they want you to write a supplemental essay which is specific to the college. In other words, you maybe end up writing 25 essays, and that's a huge load, right? And not only that, it needs to be done correctly. There is a certain way to do that. So it is a thin line. So my view is that if you want to apply to 15, you have to start the essay by the summer, right? Then you are in much better shape. Do not decide to apply to 15 colleges during October, then life will be hell, I think, to be honest. Don't do that. I think the earlier you start, the better. More colleges requires more work. The other thing to consider is that, again I go back to CMU and Penn State, right? So you want to use Penn State as a backup option, right? But your dream school is CMU, but Penn State honors program requires 5 essays, right? We ended up grading those 5 essays. You really did not want to go to Penn State, but you didn't have enough time to do a good enough application on CMU. You were reducing your chances at CMU. So it is not an easy decision. It's a very personal decision, right? I don't have a better answer for you, I think, unfortunately, on this. But 10 to 15 is the average, right? Okay. Okay, we talked about impacted major healthcare. Yes, 15 years if you want to be a surgeon. Don't be misled by ranking alone. Choice and alignment of major, we talked about that. We talked about ROI. AI, we talked about. I think we can skip this. Conclusions for parents and students, right? Statistically, enrollment is expected to dramatically decline from 2026 to 2031 because the change in population characteristic, change in demography, it is expected to decrease. But demography will also change drastically, right? The country is becoming more diverse. High-profile colleges, they got, they probably, between Ivies and MITs and Stanford, they probably got $500 billion money, right? So they are not going to disappear. They will continue to dominate the scene, right? So they will continue to influence policies about education, right? Goddess Saraswati is not present, right? I think she is present in colleges, but Lakshmi is more present than Saraswati in US colleges, right? They are run like a corporation. They want to make money. They call themselves as a non-profit or corporation. Their singular goal is to make money. But they also provide you some very high quality education, don't get me wrong. I think US universities are among the best in the world. There's no question about it. They are run as a corporation, right? Huge investment. A college, 10 times as much as a Tesla. 400, if you don't fit in within the income band I discussed about, yes, it's $400,000, right?
But to buy a Tesla, you need a college degree, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's true. Everybody knows about EFC, expected family contribution. Okay, you don't know. Okay, it's very, very important point to know. EFC is expected family contribution. That is the federal government Department of Education. It's called fafsca.gov. F like in father, A like in apple, F like in father, S like in Sam. Sorry, FAFSA, right? So that's run by the federal government, so you can key in your income, how much money you have saved, etc., etc. So based upon that, they will tell you how much you can afford for the college. But I can tell you, it is 100% more than what you think you can afford. It is always, if you think you can afford $30,000, they will say 60, right? It is calibrated in the wrong direction. But doing FAFSA can be a pain. If you don't want to do that, I think you can go to collegeboard.com. Right? College Board has the EFC calculator, right? I think you can do that in a matter of 10 minutes. That will tell you how much it is. So my point is that, I think children need to realize colleges are very expensive, and then money has to be a factor in the decision. The discussion has to take place between the parents and and the student. And then once you calculate the EFC, show it to your child and say, this is what it's going to take to send you to college, right? And it has to be done. Okay. Conclusions for students, right? Ensure that you are taking the most challenging courses. I think the last point is the most interesting. We'll come to that. Okay, recommendation, right? Get it from a teacher who knows well, not necessarily one who loves you the most, right? You don't want to go to a teacher who loves you so much. Teacher will write, Aditya is the best student I got in the last 10 years. Doesn't tell anything, right? But if you go to a teacher, it tells that I taught, AP Human Geography to Aditya, and he was participated in the college, he did this and he did this, he made a few mistakes, but he learned from that. You have to find the teacher who can write well. Very important, right? 4, focus more on courses and less on standardized tests, right? Experiment with ECs during middle school and freshman year. No one expects you to win the Nobel Prize, right? Explore science, art, music with genuine curiosity, right? Experiment, make mistakes and learn. Visit campuses, right? Even if you don't want to go to the campuses, go there, get a feel. Widen your search, right? I think we talked about that. Very important aspect. Colleges use artificial intelligence algorithm. They can track how often you are visiting their YouTube channels, YouTube websites, and that in some cases it could factor in. Work on each application individually. A common mistake people do is that they will have 10 Google documents for 10 different applications. They will copy and paste. But if you do that for 10 different universities, you lose the flow, you lose the integrity. Right? It's not an integrated document. You do not want to do that. Again, to answer your questions, we applied to 15. Yes, that is the risk that you need to that you are taking. Again, this is done by students, and parents have no way of doing that. Ultimately, quality might suffer. Right? Limit to 10 to 15. This is the most important thing. Do not ever ask ChatGPT to write the essay. Right? I did an experiment yesterday. I show you that, right? Can you write the college essay? Of course, ChatGPT said, I will be happy to help you. It will write the essay. I asked it, can you write a specific essay about why I should go to Carnegie Mellon? We wrote a beautiful 4-paragraph essay in 1 minute, right? Why it is a risk? Because CMU gets 40,000 applicants. Chances are a lot of people are doing that. They will find this. You don't need AI. You can just have 2 Microsoft documents, have it compared, it will find out. And then Turnitin is another software that they use. Turnitin can find, if you copied and used and use somebody else's work. Absolutely 100% do not even go there, do not think about this. If you do that, you will be found out, and then you would have destroyed 18 years of your hard work. Never ever do that. Okay? Okay. So this is, okay, so LinkedIn, okay, so this is my email, this is my phone number. I run a blog, if you want me to consult with on an individual basis, I have very limited time, but I can make time, okay?
Any questions from anyone? 1 second.
Actually, I have a hard copy of this. You can take a picture of that, so that way you know my name. Yeah.
Hello.
Oh, very good, okay. Yeah, so I think arts colleges, okay, I think arts could be digital art, Carnatic music, music, it could take a different flavor. I think CMU has a very good, I think, School of Arts. I think it's a great program. I think strongly, encourage you to look into CMU, and then University of Texas Austin, and they have a pretty good arts program. And then University of Rochester, I think they have a pretty good arts program. And these are the three, I think, programs that comes to my mind.
Is there anything nearby, I mean, in Pennsylvania?
I think as far, I mean, arts, I think these are the three universities that came to my mind. But yeah, I can't go beyond that, sorry. Yeah. Yeah.
Can you hear me? All right. While visiting colleges, a couple of them said essays, you do not need to, you do not need an essay when you're doing an early application. Just do these three things and throw it in and we'll take you in. So obviously I see they are trying to generate more applications, but wanted to get your view on doing an early application without an essay.
Yeah, which university is that?
Penn would say that. I mean, you mentioned Northeast earlier. Penn basically said you don't need an essay if you're doing early application.
Penn, you mean Penn State or UPenn?
Penn State.
Okay, is Penn State honors or regular Penn State?
Regular.
Yeah, so but is it binding? Are you committed to go?
No, it's early action. It's not.
By early action, it's non-binding, right?
Correct.
It's non-binding. Yeah, if you apply to Penn, right? But if they said no essay, and if it is not binding, then why not? I think by all means. But if it is binding, it's a different story, right? But I think by all means, you should do that. But I'm pretty sure you know that early action you can only apply to one university. You cannot apply to more than one, right? Like Stanford used to have early action, Yale used to have early action, but you can only choose one university for early action. And as long as you are aware of that, I don't see any issue with that. Yeah, okay.
Hello, sir. Just want to know whether college apps is the best place to find about the grants from the college. So the college provides the grants, right? Is the college apps the best resource to find about the grants?
I mean, okay, so okay, when you say grant, you mean research grant or grant awarded to the students? So your question is, how do you find how much grant the university has to offer? Yeah. I don't think I have a direct answer for. I don't think I have a direct answer for you. But in okay. So but then if the I think the way I would answer this is that certain state universities, right, have a great reputation in research, right? So because they have a great reputation in research, I would say they are more likely to have access to a lot of grants, right? I'm thinking on my feet, using common sense here, right? And I would go to San Diego, right? San Diego is a great school. It has in Qualcomm is spending $300 million in making a building. We are in the era of AI, and chip is going to play a big role, and biotech is a big area, big topic in San Diego, right? So UC San Diego is very much likely to have lot of grant money from that aspect. The other aspect, because I worked on big defense contract at Carnegie Mellon, so I think who is going to benefit from Department of Defense money, literally billions of dollars, right? Yes, the top schools, but those colleges that are very close to Maryland, because physical proximity, right? University of Maryland and College Park, they have a lot of money. There are a lot of research grant in the context of computer science and AI. That is another source. If you are looking for money in healthcare, medicine, University of Houston, because Houston is a center for everything medicine, right? They are going to have a lot of money. I think it depends on which area that I think your child wants to pursue. So based upon that, I think one can find out. Okay, yeah. Yeah.
So there are a total number of APs that a student can take in a particular year, and you're applying, say, in late August to October or November. But you're in your 12th grade and you have probably taken more number of APs in your 12th grade as opposed to 9th through 11th. So how does that impact your application, and how do you show that you actually have a total of, say, 16 APs throughout your high school?
Okay, that's a good that's a good question. So does it mean that but a student cannot take more than 6 or 7 APs, right, at 12th grade, right? So that means between 9th, 10th, and 11th they have taken 8 APs. That means 7 plus 8 is 15. I don't see any disadvantage at all because still 15, right? I mean, that is very common. That is actually very, I mean, that's actually, I'm looking at my daughter, I mean, she took like 17 APs, right? But they are all spread out over 4 years. I think, 12th grade, I think like 7, I think maybe 6 at 11th grade. So the remaining 4 at 9th and 12th. I don't see any issues. But what could be an issue is that you didn't take any APs at all, 9th, 10th, and 11th. But suddenly you are taking 6 APs at 12th grade, and the school offers 20 APs, and that's the red flag. That means students did not make use of the opportunities available. I don't see any issues with that.
Any other questions? Well, just to also add on, as SV Temple Education Chair, we also have other opportunities for you kiddos to volunteer here. We do need help with our library software. So if you're looking for adding on to your resume any volunteer help, Education Committee could use help really. And you can talk to me or Tulsi Ram. We would be glad to use your help during the summer. Not every day, it will probably over the weekends, not the whole 8 hours or 10 hours a day. It's probably 3 to 4 hours. So if you, all we are looking for is to create the library catalog. So if you can come here and volunteer, we will give you the equipment like the laptop or the iPad or the computer, and we would have to pair you up with somebody else who can help you with taking the books off the rack, labeling them through keying into a pre-formatted spreadsheet and uploading it to a software. So please do talk to me or Tulsi Ram if you are available over the next few days before you go back to school. The second piece of information is if you are looking to enhance your financial aspect to support your college, SV Temple also offers scholarships throughout the year or for the beginning of the year for your college year. That email usually is announced through our weekly and monthly newsletters starting in February of the next year. So we run through February through May, and we decide on the applicants who apply. There are multiple levels of scholarships there: academic excellence, service-based scholarships, and need-based financial scholarships. So please look out for those and also apply that. All we are looking at is your GPA and other information for us to make decision. So it's not like we are paying you 4 years of your school fees. It's just a little bit of a help to augment your financial position. So those are the two announcements I had. But hope you all felt this was very informational, and any feedback that you have or for us to improve on is very helpful. But thank you so much, Raghu Garu, for your time and your.
My pleasure. The only thing I would ask is that make sure that you visit my YouTube channel. The reason being is that if you ask me to give a presentation on a specific topic, post that on YouTube channel. That way everybody can benefit, right? So that's all.
I would like to call upon our Vice President of our EC, Sounder to do the, and Tulsiram to do the honors for Raghu Garu. I would like to thank you all, first of all, for being here today. We decided this program in a very short notice, so I would like to thank SV Temple Board of Directors and EC Committee for approving of this program, and Shri Raghu Avali for making time with determination, with passion to walk us through this. Even though I am not prepared right now to take on college, I felt like sitting here, I have so much information to talk through, and my dear friend Mekala here making my day with her sweet comments. Thank you so much all for all of you. For all the kids, please line up outside. We have some cookies and snacks for you for being so patiently sitting through here for the last 3 hours. And I would like to hear any feedback that you have for us so that we can improve this on going forward. Thank you all for being here, and thanks to all my peers of EC, Chandra Garu, Tulsi Ram, our Sounder, our Vice President, and Carl Ish, and also our temple management, office management, for helping us with all the help today with the light video recording and setup here. Thank you all. Have a great evening. If you want to re-watch this program, or if for any questions, it's always available on our Facebook page, SV Temple Facebook page, and on the YouTube as well. Thank you.
One last thing is, I want to all of us to give a big hand to all the students and parents for making time to come in a short notice and be present on a Sunday afternoon. Thank you again. I hope you are all benefited by this great presentation. Thank you.